I want to start off with a quick question to you guys. How many of you have been in Hub71 or have engaged with the ecosystem in Hub71? Okay. If you have to describe what you saw in one word, what would that be? Anyone? Okay. Someone else? Awesome. Thank you. So I think we're all of the above. I was waiting for someone to say community or ecosystem, but we'll get to that in a bit. Um, Elodie, maybe you want to start off quickly by just telling us a bit what ADIO does. I know a lot of people are familiar with Hub71, but maybe a bit of perspective on ADIO.
Sure. So ADIO is the government agency, from Abu Dhabi working on attracting investors. So our main mission is to see how we can support, the economic development of the Emirates, not only Abu Dhabi as the capital, but also the different cities within Abu Dhabi Emirates. And as Hub71, is working more on the tech side and is working more on early stage startups. The mission of ADIO is to cover all the sectors of the economy, including, of course, tech, but also all the type of legal entity who wants to grow in Abu Dhabi. So we're talking about like asset management, we are talking about like mature startups, we are talking about R&D labs, we are talking about manufacturing capabilities. So all the value chain that you need to be able to grow one sector of the economy. So I think what would be interesting, so in my past journey a couple of weeks ago, I was still with Peter at Hub. And I think it would be interesting maybe for you to describe, because Hub was launched 4 years ago under the Hub21 vision. And it would be interesting for the audience, to understand, because as you were saying, innovation, very dynamic, community ecosystem. So what was the journey of Hub, what has been achieved in the last 4 years, and what are you currently building for the future, especially on climate impact?
So I think the words that you guys mentioned, futuristic, innovation, are all outcomes of what we've been doing. If I want to describe Hub71 in one word, it's an ecosystem. So if we go back in time a bit to 2019, when Abu Dhabi government was looking at accelerating the economy, the first thing they looked at is how do we diversify the GDP from a very heavy oil and gas sector. One of the initiatives that came out of that program was let's build a global tech ecosystem. So that was the starting point of Hub71. The North Star we've always been working towards is how do we become a global tech ecosystem? An ecosystem for us, at the center of that ecosystem, there's startups, technology startups that have been disrupting the world, disrupting different industries, and making the world we live in greener, more dynamic, more innovative. That's at the center. To be able to help these startups scale and become large companies themselves and change the world the way they are separately, we need to build a supporting ecosystem. And that ecosystem is not just limited to Hub71, ADIO, Abu Dhabi government entity. This ecosystem is linked to talent, young talent. It's linked to private sector. It's linked to VCs, investors. So what we did was bring in the startups to Abu Dhabi. We provide a set of incentives to these startups that support them grow out of Abu Dhabi, reduce their operating cost in a way so that they could focus on building their products and less on just fundraising. That's the first element of support. We accelerate these startups, and then once they're ready to go to their customers, ready to start fundraising, we bring in that ecosystem that we build around them. So we support them in opening the doors to their customers, the large corporations, the governments. We support them in connecting with the investors to raise funding. We support them in getting regulated. So in general, if I want to summarize, it's an ecosystem, a global ecosystem. The startups are at the center. We give incentives, we accelerate these startups. But the most important point is we engage them with that ecosystem. We open these closed doors that you see in other regions between them and the customers and the regulator and the investors.
I think, double clicking on one of the facts is that when you look at Abu Dhabi, and Peter and myself have been serving Abu Dhabi government for several years now. And we are getting very exciting, of what's happening now. We've been the past editions of Abu Dhabi Finance Week, in the last years, and it's becoming each year, way and way bigger, with more and more, like international companies who want to have a look at what could be done in Abu Dhabi, and not only by focusing Abu Dhabi, but also as using the capital, as a hub to access to huge emerging regions, which are like Africa and Asia, which are growing very fast. So what is quite interesting is that, we had to work, especially on the tech side in Hub71, but now we are doing the same work in ADIO. We are building some of the sector and some vertical of the economy, some of them from scratch. And that's very interesting because we are starting with a greenfield that gives us hope that we don't have to fight like in more mature ecosystem. If you take Savvy, for example, which is the cluster we just released a couple of weeks ago within ADIO to focus on autonomous vehicle, air, land, and sea. It's very interesting because we know that the future of this sector, will go through the adoption and the support of the regulator. And I think that's the biggest strength of Abu Dhabi, Same thing on the tech side for the startup is that we have the regulators by our side. That doesn't mean that our regulators are flexible. They are not, because that's not their role, but they are with us to be able to build in a safe way this kind of new economy. And we believe that, especially with the help of Hub also, which is bringing a lot of very disruptive founders by, as ADIO, bringing the other part of the stakeholders, mapping the stakeholders and bringing the other pieces of the puzzle. That's how we will be able to have also this ecosystem, integrated. And our mission is really to make sure that the path of any company who wants to call Abu Dhabi his home is as smooth and as fast as possible. So that's now the type of mission we are working on.
I think it's a great segue into what I wanted to discuss next, the clustering approach. ADIO, the Abu Dhabi government in general, is looking at breaking down the economy into different clusters, different sectors, because what we notice, at least on the tech side of the equation, is the more you put relevant people together under one roof, and we saw this week, literally everyone you need to talk to, whether it's your investor, your customer, your regulator, even tech companies that you work with globally, have been in this island, in these few buildings around, just a few minutes away. And that's, I think, the beauty and the strength of Abu Dhabi that you won't find anywhere else. When you enter a new market as a startup, even as a non-tech company, it takes you months to figure out who do I need to talk to. When you come here in one day, you need to meet 2-3 people and they'll introduce you to everyone you need. So what we did in Hub71, and to answer your initial question of what's coming next, we started clustering the tech ecosystem as well, and that's in alignment with ADIO and the Abu Dhabi government. Just yesterday, we had more than 250 Web3 companies, large-scale companies like the Coinbase, Solana, young startups, entrepreneurs that were all in Hub71 gathered under what we call the digital asset clusters, which was formed around the regulations of ADGM. Today is the first day of COP28 in the UAE. We're all working towards the UAE's vision of achieving net zero. So the next cluster we're launching, and that's something you'll see happen during COP28, is how do we focus on climate tech? How do we support technology and innovation to come into Abu Dhabi and support the wider country's vision to achieve net zero? And that's something that, for me, I would describe as consolidation, making sure everything's in one place. Everyone's in one place and working towards the same objective. But then maybe I'll ask you a question about ADIO and the clusters. So what's the logic behind the clustering in general in Abu Dhabi? How did this start? What's coming next?
So what we are currently working on with the DD team, so DD being like the Department of Economic Development, the equivalent of Ministry of Economy for Abu Dhabi Emirates. So what we are currently working on is how we are able in a couple of years from now, to match a trillion GDP economy. So for that, we are working also in alignment with DD, on what should be the sector of the economies that we are also calling clusters, that we should really focus on. So the work we are currently doing, and we released the first one, which is Savvy, as I was mentioning a couple of weeks ago, but uh, several other ones will be announced soon. So keep posted. But what we are currently working is to try to understand, what is the value proposition of Abu Dhabi for these kind of sectors? What do we have to offer that can compete with more mature ecosystem, at a global scale? And from there, what we are working on is to look at what is existing in the country, what are the different players that are here already available, to do business with this kind of investor that we'll bring in. And from there, we are designing the ecosystem, trying to understand what are the different companies. Are we talking about companies which are trying to do POCs because we're talking about an addressable market that will be ready maybe in 10 years from now? Are we talking about other sectors where the vision will be ready to support on manufacturing capabilities and see how we can help them, because the UAE market, of course, has like quite an average size, how we can help them, to export from Abu Dhabi. So what we are currently doing is doing that per cluster, mapping the different type of companies we want to attract, and from there putting together, like value proposition and value packages for each of these companies. So when this work will be ready soon, we will of course announce it officially with the name of the clusters and the type of support we are able to bring. And part of the work, by the way, that we've been initiating in Hub with Peter, we tried it on the startup side. I think it was quite successful, and now we want to replicate it at the scale of Abu Dhabi Emirate and all the sectors economy, is the value creation support. It was born, with what some VCs were doing on the tech scene, is that when you put some investment in a company, you just are not a gambler and want to see who is winning and who is failing, but maybe you can go, the extra step and see how you can support them, for that growth. So that's what we want to do also within ADIO. That's why we are launching, and I'm heading this new department called Value Creation. The idea is really to see how we can bring value for the investors that believe that there is a path for their companies in Abu Dhabi, and how they can bring value also to Abu Dhabi. So that's really what we are working on based on these different sectors.
Like, what I want to share one funny thing that I've been hearing for a while, the past week, and we've been getting a lot of companies introduced by ADIO, by Mubadala. We send companies to ADIO. Every single person I meet asks me, "What's the catch here? Why are you guys being so supportive? Why do you want to take me to the next building to meet the next person?" I think the catch for us is when more companies come here, when more companies succeed and scale out of here and raise funding and revenue, this is affecting the Abu Dhabi economy. This is affecting the GDP in a way positively, and that's why we exist. So I urge you all, if you're a tech company, if you're a VC, if you're a corporation, regardless who you are, you will find the right entity to talk to in Abu Dhabi, and everyone will be supportive to help you soft land here and scale from here to the world, not just the UAE market, but it's a very centrally located city and country that could help you go. If you're coming from the west, go east. If you're coming from the east, go west. So we're here to support you. We all work very closely together, and that's a single door that you need to open to access the whole city.
And maybe I will have a more philosophical approach to that, It's like welcome, and welcoming people are part of the Arab culture and is part of the Middle Eastern culture. That's something we want to share. Everyone is welcome if they're, of course, committed to build a line with our vision, That's why we tell people, stop. Of course, you need to start coming back and forth, to try to see if Abu Dhabi could be a fit for you. But if you think that should be a fit, please try to localize some of your team members in the country. Try to understand how we do business. Try to connect with the support of Hub71 and ADIO with the right people. And the second thing is that maybe also we want to share back what happened to us when we move our family, like a dozen of years ago, when some of our kids were born in the UAE and they are calling now this place home, I would be really happy, that some other people can experience what we've been experiencing, and what the country has been able to give to us and our families.
I echo the same.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.